Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of my original works, The Cryptid Cowboy, written and narrated by King Tron. Please enjoy. Waking to the sound of two drunks in the next room arguing back and forth, I peered through the dark drapes and noticed that the sun was starting to rise, which meant it was time for me to move along. Washing my face and grabbing a cup of coffee for the road, I sat in my truck, fumbling through the pages and case files that I was working on before the horrible news stopped me in my tracks. Bighorn National Park faces yet another disappearance. I read the headlines aloud as I started the engine and pulled from my spot, returning to the open road. I found it hard to not think of the terrible event that had just yesterday found its way into my reality. However, in times such as these, I always find peace in completing my cases and abolishing the dark from the light. I paid my entrance fee and entered the park through the entrance in Buffalo, Wyoming. Driving through the park and finally arriving at the exact hiking and camping area where the most recent disappearance had occurred, I pulled into the small dirt access road that led to the parking lot. I noticed a few other small vehicles and small groups of people sitting at the park tables eating and talking. I decided that the best approach for this case would be to reenact the same events that occurred to lead to the camper going missing. Grabbing my tent and my go bag, I slapped the mechanical lock on my truck door and wandered in between the tall live pines and oak trees that lined the area. Local police had wrapped up their investigation of the area for the day and had announced to the locals and tourists that there were, quote-unquote, no signs that anyone should be concerned of safety. Oh, how very wrong they were. The tape was still wrapped around the trees that surrounded where the camper went missing, making my job easier. I began to search the area for signs and found exactly what I thought I would. Deep scratches in the ground, an abundance of fur, gashes in the camper's tent, and bark shredded from the tree. Goddamn beta! I spit as I also started to catch the smell. This was the work of a beta werewolf. Yes, like that werewolf. However, these wolves in the real world were not the type to transform from man to beast at the sight of a full moon. These beasts have been canine since the day they were born, a subspecies of a once common, now extinct Nagwal, which was an ancient shapeshifter that favored transforming into creatures of the forest. The betas of today are extremely intelligent canines. However, they cannot communicate with humans, but can very much understand the human language, which is a very unfortunate leftover tool from ancient times, and it certainly allows them to hunt, stalk, and kill humans efficiently. These beasts have evolved over the years to the ultimate apex predator. Now even I must admit that taking on a pack would be suicidal, but this appears to be a lone wolf. No pun intended. Russ taught me all about these damn killers, and I was certainly fortunate to learn from the best. The most efficient way to lure the beast out is to pretend to be a camper or a food source in distress. Now, as stated before, these animals are unbelievably intelligent and can often smell a trap from a light year away. So it's best to throw in your best method acting to catch them off guard and on the prowl. I decided the best approach would be to make it seem as though I had taken a wrong step and had gotten injured somewhere lost in the trail. I had also had a little something up my sleeve. Reaching into my go bag, my fingers found and retrieved my vial of what we in the business call kibble. The disgusting recipe includes wolf urine, liquefied intestines, bone dust, and the hair of a female wolf in heat. Now trust me, I'm not a fan of having this crap in my bag, but it works like a charm for selling a bit of theatrical acting to draw them in. The nasty goo is something that comes from the old times of ancient voodoo and witch doctors, passed down through the centuries. I waited until I could hear the last of the park visitors pulling out of the parking lot and then began staging my trap. I doused a few low-hanging branches with the kibble and lit my fire for the night. Just before dusk fell, I made my move. Staging both my shotgun with silver lace slugs and filling my revolver with 6 rounds of hate, I lay both guns to my side and covered myself with a blanket, hiding my plans. I started to scream and shout, doing my best to impersonate a person in extreme distress. After a while, the smell of dirty fur and rotten meat overwhelmed the cool night air. I knew the beta was close, but not committed to me, so it was time to push myself onto the final act. I pulled a small knife from my pocket and proceeded to cut a gash into my left hand to really sell the bit. Shortly after the first drop of my blood hit the ground, I heard the low, grungy growl of a decade-old monster, just out of the glow of my fire ring. "Showtime," I muttered excitedly to myself. I screamed, a blood-curdling scream that echoed off the trees and shot out into the dark forest. The beta couldn't resist the free prey and leapt from the darkness into the glowing aura of my firelight, right as I pulled the blanket from my body and lifted my shotgun, letting fly "fuck you" at 1,500 feet per second straight into the skull of the foul man killer. The beast hit the ground like a brick thrown off a building with a loud thud and a deep guttural moan as the life left its being. I must admit, the rush from coming face to face with something that by all rights should have the upper hand on you 10 times out of 10 by nature alone and coming out on top is a great feeling. Retrieving my bag and returning it to my back, I couldn't help but think fondly of my luck. But as luck would have it, I missed one fatal flaw. This was a pack, and not a single beta. And I was able to make that out when another, even larger, dark black beta wolf with glowing yellow eyes stepped out into the glow of my fire and began to growl and bare its teeth at me. And man, he was pissed. I could smell the rancid breath of the beast as it prepared to attack me. I raised my shotgun one more time to find center mass on the beast. As it leapt at me, my finger bore down on the trigger. Click! My heart dropped. Had I really forgotten to load a second round into my trusty shotgun? Was I really that stupid? These questions quickly flashed through my mind as I also tried to comprehend the image of a 500-plus pound beast flying through the air, dead set on destruction. I somehow managed to fall to the right of the airborne beast and reached for my revolver when another large, white mongrel with glowing red eyes reached the place where the first beast had taken its final breath. As we made eye contact, I raised the barrel of my six-shooter and unleashed an explosion of gunpowder and silver-plated lead into the tree next to the white beast, as the black wolf had barreled into my back while firing. The beta on my back clamped down on my upper back and the back of my head, tearing a large hole in my ear, but also, in unison, puncturing a can of bear mace that I had kept in my go bag. The very same mace that I had sworn was a waste of time for this trip had saved my neck, quite literally. The black beta began to shake its head violently as the mace set into its eyes, nose, and mouth. I also caught some of the mace in my eyes from the canister eruption, and too had to shake off the pain. Lifting my head with watering eyes, I caught a flash of white in my vision and unleashed another 2 rounds from my revolver, striking the white beast in the stomach, causing it to stumble out of the fire's glow, whimpering into the night. Returning fully to my feet and turning to the black beast, I lined up my final shot with my revolver and ended the abomination where it blindly stood. Taking a moment to regain my full vision, I realized that the blood was flowing down my shoulder and dripping down my fingertips. I knelt to the ground, still surveying the surrounding area, and grabbed my medical pouch. Opening the pouch, I found my roll of gauze and was able to quickly wrap my bleeding ear and stop the flow. I needed to make sure all 3 beasts were put down. So I reloaded my guns, packed up all my gear, and set out into the woods in the direction of the white beta werewolf. Following a heavy flow of dark red blood, with the beam of my headlamp, I traversed the dark, musty woods until I found my target. Both of my shots had found their mark, landing in the beast's stomach and dealing a fatal blow. "Humans off the menu tonight, boys," I exclaimed, standing over the foul-smelling, yet visually very beautiful animal. I'd never seen a pure white beta wolf before. Now, normally, I don't find any form of joy in taking trophies. However, not many men can say they'd taken on a beta werewolf pack and lived. Unsheathing my small blade from my belt, I sliced a patch of ivory white fur from the wolf and placed it in my bag. The trek back to the truck in the dark, bleeding and smelling like mangy man-eating beasts, wasn't particularly enjoyable, but the realization of what I had just accomplished was reassuring, telling me that the tolls were worth the ends. There would be no longer headlines flashing in the papers of missing hikers and campers from this park. Returning to the truck and loading my gear into the cab, I made sure to take a minute and bandage my wounds properly and catch my breath before falling asleep, exhausted in the seat. As I slept, dreaming of the nightmares of what had become of my friend, I found myself standing once again in the dark depths of the forest. But this time, I had no flashlight, no guns, no go bag, no glowing fire, and no goddamn clue where I was. I found myself wanting of my eyes to adjust to the over-encumbering darkness that surrounds my every direction. Rubbing my eyes and slapping my own face, I yelled, "Wake up! Come on, man, wake the hell up!" Interrupting the vast darkness and the quiet ambiance of the forest, I could hear a deep growl in the distance. I was not alone, nor at peace. I could hear footsteps and limbs snapping. Forest creatures, insects, and wind had all but ceased to exist as my mind zeroed in on the unforeseen creature or person that stalked just outside my unadjusted eyesight. The vast sense of dread that pooled in the pit of my stomach almost brought me to my knees as realization had set in. I was stuck here in the darkness, here in the endless space that I had no control over. "Colt, wake up now!" I could feel myself trying to scream the words, but felt as though they dribbled out of my shaking body and slid to the ground. The hoot of an owl ripped me from my trance, causing a slight panic attack to well up in my mind. Just as my eyes finally started to properly adjust to the conditions, I caught a glimpse of multiple sets of glowing eyes. Red, blue, yellow orbs of light flickered amongst the trees as realization set in that I was faced with dozens of beta wolf mongrels. Air left my lungs as the tread of my well-worn boots flung mud upon my escape from the scene. Racing through the vast landscape of dead fallen rocks proved difficult to traverse as the trees seemed to box me in and control my path, as the rocks seemed to reach for my feet in an attempt to stop my fleeing. I found what seemed to be safe harbor at the base of a large, vibrant pine with low-hanging branches to help cover me. My heart pounded like a sledgehammer against rock, forcing blood into my brain as I attempted to comprehend my situation. "Wake up, man! Come on! Get up!" The words mixed with the banging of my heartbeat. Boom! 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 My eyes darted across the dark expanse, finding one. No, two. No, 10 pair of flickering eyes in every direction. The deep smell of rotting meat and dog filled the air in my lungs as I could almost taste the vile scent. The sense of doom welled up in my lungs and flowed through my veins into the tears that well up in my eyes. The beast stepped closer into sight and started mauling of me was the same ivory-white monster I had finished off earlier today. As it approached, my gaze traveled to its side and found the same wounds and clump of missing fur that I had taken. "This has to be a dream," I screamed inside. The wolf began its assault on me, bearing down on my left arm as I hopelessly attempted to shield myself from the rows of long, jagged, plaque-riddled teeth. Bright red blood splattered the ground inside of the pine. As the animal bore down harder into my flesh, I could feel its teeth grinding against my bone. My heart screamed sonic booms of blood into my head as I felt the heat in my cheeks and ears well up. Boom, 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 boom. Knock, 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 knock. "Sir, you cannot sleep in your car unless you pay for camping for the night." An unfamiliar voice shook through the night air and echoed into the forest, jolting both I and the beast. "What?" I said in a panic-stricken voice, caught off guard by the intervention into the horrific scene I found myself in. I continued to hear knocking, but faster and louder. Knock, 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 knock. "Sir, I could call the local police if you need, but you need to get up." The voice echoed into my brain again and awoke me from my horribly vivid slaughter. "I'm awake. Sorry," I responded to the park ranger, cranking down my steamed-up window as the sound of my own heartbeat pulsed through my ears. "You know, there are bear in these woods, man," retorted the ranger. "Wouldn't want to get eaten, right?" Yeah, for sure," I responded, wiping the sweat from my face, finding it had mixed with my once-dried blood from my ear. "Whoa, man, is that blood?" Looking at my red palm in the beam of the ranger's flashlight. "Yeah, I had a run-in with a rogue tree branch while hiking," looking up at the tall, long-bearded, gruff man, now leaning into the truck. took a whiff of me and stepped back, saying, "Well, it's good I don't smell booze on you, but man, no offense, you need a shower. The lodge in town has hot showers and rooms for cheap. I suggest you head that way for the night and get cleaned up." Nodding my head in accordance with his words of wisdom, I said, "I'll do that. Thank you." Nodding his head and returning to his dark green Ford F-250, he disappeared once again into the dark. Fumbling through my pocket, I found solace in feeling the long fur flow through my fingers. With the reassurance of my safety, what a fucking dream, spilled from my brain and out into the steamed cab of my truck. Rolling down my windows and starting the old Chevy, turning on my barely working air to clear my windshield, I made my way towards the park's exit. The lodge in town wasn't much for show, but it was a 2-story, log-sided building with a small driveway and benches lining the front. Parking the truck in the first spot visible, I made my way, along with my bag, into the lodge. Finding a young woman sitting at the desk with her feet and a pair of Uggs on the chair next to her, looking up from her cell phone, she muttered, "Ew, man, what the hell?" Not sure if she was off-put by the smell or the sight of the crusty blood on my clothes and hair. I said, "Room for one with a shower, please." Nodding in agreement, she said, "Dude, even if you didn't ask." Grabbing the key from her, I headed to my room and finished off my long night by cleaning my body and guns before closing my eyes. The person that had occupied the room before me had left the bedside alarm clock to go off at 4 a.m. The sounds of Chris Stapleton, "You Should Probably Leave," blared into my ears abruptly, awaking me from my sleep far too early. As the jolt of consciousness shot through my body, I quickly slapped the silence button and fell back into rest. Rest, as it seemed, would not be on the table for me, as my phone rang at just 4:35. It was Red. Clearing my throat and shaking off the exhaustion, I spoke. "Red, man, I'm pretty tore up right now. Can I call you back?" "Hey, Colt, sorry for catching you at a bad time. I'll be quick, I promise," retorted Red. "Okay, buddy. What do you got?" "Well, first, Colt, I'm really sorry about Rusty. I know you guys were close, and this whole thing just sucks ass. Look, I'm still working on that patch of fur you sent me with Ritlin. I haven't found anything yet, but I'm working on something else that I need you to go check on, please." Matt Redwich was the youngest child of Mary Jane and Ted Redwich, two of the best damn people anyone could meet. They were in the business of cryptid hunting, but they also ran an electronics store in downtown Boulder. They were the type of folk to give you the shirt off their back and the food out of their mouths. They were, as a family, drawn into this when the two oldest children of the family were involved in a tragic attack while fishing in Ted's John boat on the Colorado River west of Denver, towards the Upper Basin area. A large, unknown cryptid leapt from the shore and attacked both of the teens, dragging them away into the water before Ted nor Mary Jane could react. Matt, or Red, grew up practically running the electronics store for his parents, and he was a damn whiz kid when it came to anything that involved power and components. After his parents retired and moved on from the business, Red became the go-to man for most of us on the front line. He was never cut out to be out in the field, but he was key in helping as best as he could. Large connections he made in Boulder proved to be a vital help in forensics and research. Red informed me that JT hadn't reached out in a long time and had mentioned the last time they spoke, JT mentioned a few rogue mountain lions roaming near his cabin. JT, Josiah Thomas, was another of those legendary former cryptid hunters who helped Russ and many others, such as the Redwich family, clear large droves of the dark and depraved from this region of the world. JT was a large behemoth of a man. He grew up somewhere deep within the Rocky Mountains. He was a man amongst men and was renowned for his prowess in the field of tracking, trapping, and hunting. The man truly was an icon, and he led a life of righteous and honorable acts that saved many. Unfortunately, as most stories tend to do, his diverted into a path of sadness and despair as he, his beloved wife Elizabeth, and their two young children fell victim to a terrible house fire. Josiah was returning home from a trip to town when he noticed smoke rising in the distance. Panicked at the sight, he raced towards his home. Reaching the end of his drive, JT noticed that the flames had consumed and smoke billowed from the windows and from in between the logs of the cabin. A cabin in which he and Elizabeth had built their lives together. Josiah raced for the door and leapt, heaving his heavy frame into the sturdily made pine door, splintering it to pieces. As the remains of the door swung violently from its hinges, smoke and flames began to exit above him. Josiah crawled through the smoke and flames as the immense heat burned the hair and skin from his back and melted the clothes he wore. Try as he did, Josiah was unable to retrieve his family from the home. As the fire department arrived, they sent their best crew of entrymen into the house, fully suited and in use of their SCBA equipment, as the hose crew fought the blazing flames from the exterior. They recovered Josiah and were able to save his life as the flames had devastated his outsides and charred his lungs with smoke. It took Josiah a few years of recovering from the severe burns on his back and legs before he was cleared of the doctor's appointments. As the physical damage cleared and the mental despair became too great, he retired from hunting cryptids. JT now resides in a self-made cabin in the Rockies near Billings, Montana, just a matter of miles north of the Crow Reservation. I'll check on him tomorrow, Red. I need rest. I tangled with a pack of betas tonight, and I'm a little beat up. Shit, man! You want me to call somebody else? Said Red. No, I'm good. I just need to rest today, okay? Of course, dude. No problem. Red and I said our goodbyes, and I drifted back to sleep. Waking up to housekeepers knocking on my door later in the afternoon, I awoke and let them into the room, as I needed to go find some grub. Walking into the lobby, I found the same woman from when I checked in first thing this morning and asked her, "Any good places to eat around here?" Looking up for her magazine, she rolled her eyes and pointed at the small wall of traveler brochures. "Thanks," I muttered, as I walked over to glare at the rows of paper describing the local attractions and festivals. Finding one that mentioned a burger joint just down the road, I made my choice. Returning to the lodge after my meal, I yet again found the same girl working, and I asked her, "You must live here if you're still sitting here working." "My stupid mom's stupid boyfriend owns it, so that means..." "Ah, you're free labor. I get it," I said, cutting her off. "You got it," she exclaimed in sarcastic enthusiasm. "Business been slow because of the disappearances, or..." I really don't know what drove me to ask, except for curiosity, I suppose. "Yeah, but they aren't disappearances. They're being taken." My curiosity arose to an even higher level. Now leaning against the desk, I asked, "What do you mean by that?" "People get lost all the time, wander off the trail or whatever." Letting out a huff, and yet another eye roll, she set down a sketch from a notepad she kept beneath the desk. On the pages lay the outline of a green alien, like those of a science fiction movie. "Aliens? Really?" Laughing as I replied, "You got it," she replied, using the same sarcastic attitude as earlier. You see, people in the modern world always seek out the answers to mysteries, but it somehow never seems to be the correct one. I guess that is due to the truth that lies woven within reality being too terrifying to comprehend. Always seeking the answers, but settling on what is comfortable to one's mind. If only this girl knew that the real dangers of this world were here, stationed on this earth, with their feet planted on the very same ground as ours, and that those dangers had been here since before the dawn of man, and seemingly always will be. I sarcastically thanked the girl for the dinner recommendation and said, "Watch out for the little green men. Take care of yourself, kid." A scowl crawled across her face, and then she said, "Yeah, sure dude, whatever," before huffing and returning to her magazine. Well, everyone, that was part 2 to my original, The Cryptid Cowboy. The next parts will continue to be released periodically. Please make sure to check them out, as well as visiting our Facebook page, King Tron, and our Instagram page, King Tron on YT. Thank you. As always, have a killer day.